I came home early, but my wife didn't even notice. She was standing in the kitchen, chatting on the phone. He's so naive. He thinks we're just friends. As soon as he signs the power of attorney, we'll disappear with his money. She didn't know I was standing behind the door. I met Emily at a charity fundraiser in Boston 6 years ago. She stood out immediately, not just because of her striking looks and the way her emerald dress complemented her auburn hair, but because of how she listened. While everyone else was busy talking about themselves, Emily asked questions. She remembered details. She made me feel like the most interesting person in the room. I was 34 then, fresh off a successful app launch that had caught the attention of several major tech companies. After years of 80-hour weeks and ramen dinners, my software development company was finally gaining traction. Emily seemed genuinely interested in my work, asking insightful questions that showed she'd done her homework before the event. "Your security protocols are innovative," she said over drinks. "Especially for someone who didn't come up through traditional channels." I was impressed and a little suspicious. Most people's eyes glazed over when I talked about encryption algorithms. "I did some research when I saw your name on the guest list," she admitted with a disarming smile. "I work in finance. Understanding tech is part of my job." That night turned into dinner the following evening, which led to weekend hikes along the Charles River, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. Emily was everything I'd dreamed of: intelligent, ambitious, supportive. When she moved into my downtown apartment after 8 months, it felt right. "We're a power couple in the making," she'd joke, massaging my shoulders after late nights of coding. "Your brains, my financial savvy, will build an empire together." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She celebrated every small victory with me, stayed up reviewing contracts when I was too exhausted to focus, and seemed to genuinely care about my success. When investors started taking serious interest in my security software, Emily was the one who helped me prepare presentations that wouldn't put them to sleep. "You're brilliant with code," she'd say, "but let me handle the people part. Trust me, I know what makes them tick." And I did trust her. Completely. By our 3rd anniversary, my company had grown from a one-man operation to a team of 28 employees. We'd moved from my cramped apartment to a modern house in Cambridge with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Emily had left her job at the investment firm to help manage the business side of my growing company. "It just makes sense," she argued when I expressed concerns about mixing our personal and professional lives. "Why pay an outsider when I already understand your vision better than anyone?" She was right about that. Emily knew exactly what I wanted: to build security software that actually protected people rather than harvesting their data. She spoke about my mission with such conviction that sometimes she articulated it better than I could. "You found your perfect match," my mother told me during one of her rare visits from Arizona. "She believes in you." The proposal happened naturally. On a weekend trip to Cape Cod, with the Atlantic stretching endlessly before us, I asked Emily to marry me. Her yes was immediate, her embrace tight, her kiss deep. I felt like the luckiest man alive. Our wedding was small but elegant, Emily's choice. "I'd rather put the money toward our future," she said. We exchanged vows overlooking the ocean, with only 20 guests in attendance. Her family was conspicuously minimal, just a cousin and an aunt she claimed wasn't close with her parents. "They died when I was in college," she'd explained early in our relationship. "Car accident. I don't like talking about it." I never pushed. Everyone has painful chapters they'd rather keep closed. The first 4 years of marriage were everything I'd hoped for. As my company continued to grow, attracting attention from Silicon Valley giants, Emily became increasingly involved in our financial planning. She had a knack for finding tax advantages and investment opportunities one would have missed. "We should diversify," she suggested one evening over dinner. "Your company is doing amazingly well, but we should protect ourselves against market fluctuations." It made sense. Emily outlined a sophisticated investment strategy that spread our assets across real estate, stocks, and several foreign markets. She handled the paperwork, explaining the broad strokes but sparing me the details she knew would bore me. "This is why we're perfect together," I'd tell her. "You handle the numbers, I'll handle the code." When she first mentioned putting some assets in her name, it was framed as a protection strategy. "It's just smart planning," she explained. "If something ever happened to you, I wouldn't be locked out of our resources while the will goes through probate. And it provides better protection against lawsuits in your industry." I hesitated only briefly. "Let me talk to our lawyer about it." "I already did," she responded smoothly. "James says it's standard practice for entrepreneurs. He's drawing up the paperwork now." James Peterson had been my attorney since the early days of the company. If he thought it was a good idea, who was I to argue? Still, something about the conversation left me vaguely uneasy, though I couldn't pinpoint why. That feeling faded as we entered our 5th year of marriage and my company received an acquisition offer that made national business news. The negotiations were intense, with Emily often taking point on the financial terms while I focused on making sure my team would be protected in the transition. "This is it, babe," she whispered the night before the final signing. "Everything you've worked for is about to pay off. I'm so proud of you." I held her close that night, grateful for her unwavering support through the years of uncertainty and 18-hour workdays. The deal would set us up for life, with enough money to pursue whatever projects caught our interest next. "We should celebrate," I said the morning after the contracts were signed. "Take that trip to Japan you've always talked about." Emily smiled, but her eyes remained focused on her laptop. "Soon. I just need to finalize some things with the asset transfers first." She'd been working long hours lately, often taking calls in the spare bedroom with the door closed. When I asked, she explained they were sensitive discussions about our portfolio that couldn't risk being overheard. It seemed reasonable, financial matters required discretion. Then came the day that changed everything. I had a final meeting with the company that had acquired mine, signing off on the last technical integration plans. It wrapped up earlier than expected, leaving me with a free afternoon, a rarity in recent months. I decided to surprise Emily with lunch from her favorite Vietnamese restaurant. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street, a sleek black Audi with tinted windows. Probably a neighbor's visitor, I thought. I entered quietly through the side door, takeout bags in hand, planning to surprise her. That's when I heard Emily's voice from the kitchen, animated in a way I hadn't heard in weeks. "He's so naive. He thinks we're just friends. As soon as he signs the power of attorney, we'll disappear with his money." I froze, the paper bags suddenly heavy in my hands. "I know, baby," she continued, her voice dropping to that intimate tone I thought was reserved for me. "Just a few more days. The accounts are already set up in Cayman. Once he signs, we can transfer everything within hours." A laugh, light, carefree. "No, he doesn't suspect a thing. He trusts me completely." Another pause. "Of course I've thought about that. The prenup only protects what he had before marriage. Everything since then is fair game with the right paperwork. And guess who's been handling all the paperwork?" I stood motionless behind the kitchen door, blood rushing in my ears. The world I thought I knew was collapsing, rearranging itself into something unrecognizable. "The house in Santorini is perfect. He doesn't even know I bought it, it's under my maiden name. 3 months from now, we'll be watching sunsets over the Mediterranean while he tries to figure out where it all went wrong." Another laugh, this one harder, colder. "Love? Please. It was a job, and I've earned every penny. 5 years of playing the supportive wife to a workaholic who barely remembers my birthday. I deserve this payday." I backed away silently, returned to my car, and drove. I had no destination in mind, I just needed movement, distance, time to process the betrayal so complete it seemed to rewrite our entire history. For hours, I circled the city, memories flashing through my mind like a corrupted slideshow. Every tender moment now questioned, every sacrifice reinterpreted. Had anything been real? Had she ever loved me at all? By evening, shock had hardened into something else, a cold, focused clarity. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was facing. The next morning, I pretended nothing had changed. I kissed Emily goodbye, told her I'd be late at the office finalizing transition details. Instead, I went to see James Peterson, my attorney, or who I thought was my attorney. His receptionist seemed surprised to see me. "Do you have an appointment?" "Mr. Peterson is actually out of town this week." That was news to me. "Since when?" "He left for a conference in Chicago 3 days ago. He won't be back until Monday." Emily had claimed to speak with him just last week about the asset transfers. Another lie. I see. Actually, I wanted to review some paperwork he prepared for my wife and me. Power of attorney documents. The receptionist frowned, typing something into her computer. "I don't see any recent POA documents for you in our system. The last thing we prepared was the amended operating agreement for your company sale." My suspicions confirmed, I thanked her and left. My next stop was to a different law firm, one Emily knew nothing about. I needed representation with no connection to our shared life. Margaret Chen came highly recommended for her expertise in both corporate law and divorce proceedings, a combination I now desperately needed. "Based on what you've told me, we need to move quickly but carefully," Margaret advised after I explained the situation. "First, we need to understand exactly what documents your wife has prepared and what access she currently has to your assets." That required some detective work. While Emily was at her weekly yoga class, I searched her home office. In a locked drawer, the key hidden predictably beneath a potted plant, I found a folder labeled "Power of Attorney" with documents ready for my signature. They were comprehensive, giving Emily authority over not just our joint assets but my personal accounts, the proceeds from my company's sale, even medical decisions. I photographed everything, then returned it exactly as I'd found it. Further searching revealed more: bank statements for accounts I'd never heard of, correspondence with a realtor in Greece, and a passport, not in Emily's married name, but under a name I didn't recognize, with her photo. Margaret's assessment was blunt. "She's been planning this for a long time. The good news is she hasn't gotten your signature yet. The bad news is she's already moved some assets that were in her name or jointly held." "How much?" "Based on these statements, about $3 million. But the bulk of your wealth from the company sale is still secure since those funds haven't fully transferred yet." "What do I do now?" "We counterplan," Margaret said firmly. "And we don't let her know we're onto her until everything is secured." Over the next week, I lived a double life. At home, I was the same devoted husband, distracted by work details, completely oblivious. With Margaret, I methodically unwound Emily's financial web, securing what assets I could and documenting everything. I learned that James had been consulting with Emily, but the documents weren't prepared by his firm. They were sophisticated forgeries that would give her virtually unlimited access to everything I owned. I also discovered the identity of her accomplice, the owner of the black Audi. His name was Ryan Mercer, a financial consultant with a history of fraud allegations that had never quite stuck. Emily had apparently met him 2 years earlier at a charity event I was too busy to attend. Their plan was elegant in its simplicity. Once I signed the power of attorney, they would transfer everything to offshore accounts, file for divorce while I was on a business trip, and disappear before I even realized what had happened. "She's done this before," Margaret informed me after hiring a private investigator. "Under different names. At least twice that we can trace." The knowledge should have hurt. Instead, it hardened my resolve. This wasn't about a marriage gone wrong, it was about a predator who had targeted me from the beginning. When Emily finally approached me with the documents, I was ready. "It's just a formality," she said, sliding the papers across our kitchen island. "With all the changes from the acquisition, we need to update our estate planning." I took my time reading, feeling her impatience though she hid it well behind a mask of casual interest. "This seems pretty comprehensive," I remarked. "That's the point," she smiled. "To cover all contingencies." I nodded thoughtfully. "Makes sense." I signed with a flourish, not the power of attorney she'd prepared, but a different set of documents Margaret had drawn up. They looked identical on the surface, but these transferred all jointly held assets back solely into my name and revoked any financial authorizations Emily currently held. "Perfect," Emily said, not bothering to review what I'd signed. She was already mentally spending my money. "I'll have these filed tomorrow." "No rush," I replied, kissing her cheek. "I trust you completely." That night, while Emily slept, I finished executing our countermeasures. All accounts were secured, passwords changed, financial institutions alerted to potential fraud. The evidence of Emily's plan was safely documented and stored with Margaret. For the next few days, I watched Emily continue her performance, completely unaware that her plan was collapsing. She was affectionate, attentive, the perfect wife. It was almost admirable, in a twisted way. A week later, she made her move. I was working in my home office when I heard her frustrated voice from the bedroom. "What do you mean, card declined?" "That's impossible." "Try it again." A pause. "What do you mean, account not found?" "I'm looking at the account number right now." I calmly walked to the kitchen and poured myself a coffee. By the time Emily stormed in, I was casually browsing the news on my tablet. "The bank says our accounts are frozen," she said, struggling to keep her voice level. "There must be some mistake." I looked up with mild concern. "That's strange. Let me check mine." I made a show of checking my phone, then frowned. "My account seemed fine." "Maybe it's just yours." The flicker of panic in her eyes was brief but unmistakable. "I'm going to call them right now," she said, turning away. "Before you do that," I said quietly, "maybe you should check if the house in Santorini is still in your name. Or should I say, in Rebecca Winter's name?" She froze. "That is your real name, isn't it? Or is it Jennifer Morrison, like it was in Seattle? Or Amanda Thorne, like in Chicago?" She turned slowly, her expression transforming from confusion to calculation in an instant. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "I think you do," I replied, sliding my tablet toward her. On the screen was a comprehensive dossier, her previous identities, the men she'd targeted, the money she'd stolen. "Did Ryan help you pick me out, or was I your own find?" "You've been spying on me," she deflected, anger rising to mask her fear. "No, Emily, or whoever you are. I've been protecting myself from a thief." Her eyes narrowed. "You can't prove anything." "I don't need to prove it to know it's true. But for what it's worth, I have recordings. Phone calls, conversations with Ryan. Plans for your little disappearing act." The color drained from her face. "Those are illegal. You can't record someone without their consent." I smiled. "Not in Massachusetts, a one-party consent state. But that's the least of your concerns right now." I slid another document toward her, a copy of what she thought I had signed. "You should really check signatures before filing legal documents. These transferred everything back to me, not to you. The power of attorney you prepared? Never signed. Never filed." Her composure cracked. "You son of a bitch. Says the woman who was planning to steal everything I've worked for." She switched tactics instantly, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not what you think. Ryan was pressuring me. I was scared. I never would have gone through with it." "Save it," I said, standing. "Your things are packed in the guest room. You have until tomorrow to leave. You can't just throw me out. I'm your wife. I have rights." "Actually," I countered, "the prenup you were so careful to work around. It has a fraud clause." Everything documented by the private investigator triggers it. You get nothing. I'll fight this, she hissed, mask finally dropping completely. I'll tell everyone you abused me. I'll ruin your reputation. You can try, I agreed. But those offshore accounts you set up. They've been reported to the Financial Crimes Unit. And your friend Ryan? Already being questioned about his role in your previous ventures. She stared at me with naked hatred. You couldn't have figured this out alone. Who helped you? Does it matter? You taught me an important lesson, Emily. Trust should be earned, not given blindly. She stormed out, slamming doors, cursing my existence. I remained at the kitchen island, strangely calm. The woman I had loved, or thought I had loved, had never really existed. By morning, she was gone, along with the jewelry I had given her over the years. I let her take it, small price for freedom. 3 days later, I received a text from an unknown number, "You've ruined my life." I stared at the message for a long time before responding, "No, Emily. You tried to ruin mine." I blocked the number and poured myself a scotch. The house felt empty, but not in the way I had expected. It was a clean emptiness, free of lies and manipulation. Ryan Mercer was arrested the following week, not for what he had planned with Emily, but for outstanding warrants in another state. Emily herself seemed to have vanished, likely moving on to her next target with a new name and a new story. Sometimes I wonder if any of it was real, her laugh, her touch, the way she would read to me when I couldn't sleep. Had every moment been calculated, every intimacy a step in a long con? I'll never know. And perhaps that's the cruelest cut of all. But I survived. My company's legacy remains intact. My future, while altered, is still mine to shape. And I've learned to trust my instincts when something feels wrong, even when I can't yet see why.